Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to do a bit more to the Wildone Blockhead and paint the driver. To get the driver out from the chassis, we've got a few body clips to remove, and we'll need to remove the screws from the front of the cage so we've got some space to wiggle the driver free. This week we were going to do a few bits, wiring up the lights and making a battery holder so we can avoid the battery wires being on the outside, but I'm still waiting for the servo on-off switch for the lights. I thought I'd do the driver anyway, as although not much in the way of content, it's not really the same topic as all the electronics. Anyway, now the driver's free, we can remove his head. There's just a screw and washer from the inside of the body. Next, since we're going to be sanding the helmet, we need to make sure the two halves can't move. We'll remove the screw that holds them together and run some medium or thick cyanoacrylate where they contact and then rebuild it. Before we start sanding, we will of course need to leave it a good couple of hours to dry. Now usually we would use Plasti-Weld for things like this, but the silver plating might just stop it working properly. If we stripped the silver off the plastic we'd be okay, but the cyano's going to do the job just fine. While that's drying, I'm going to try some plastic putty to fill in the hole in the back of the helmet. Usually I'd pack the hole with some plastic offcuts, then just skim it with some filler. I've often wondered if this putty would work. More to the point, if we fill the hole, will it still dry properly? I'm going to squirt it in, filling the hole right to the top and adding a bit more so there's a bit to work with to make the shape. I know it's going to take a while for the glue and putty to dry, so we might as well paint up the body. Now Tamiya thankfully have already painted the driver on the outside, both the black paint and the white, so we don't need to prime it. As long as it's nice and clean, we can just get on with the paint. So here we are a little bit later. Currently it's a bit cleaner than I'd like though, so I did a bit of a dark wash to end up with this. It's not perfect, but it'll do. It's certainly a lot better than the plain white, if nothing else. The helmet has had a few hours to dry now, so I've had a go at sanding. The first pass being fairly rough, just trying to get the two halves to line up nicely. I also sanded the putty at the back, but it was still soft under the outside layer. I think it will dry eventually, but we're going to need to wait overnight. Also, I'm using a wet and dry paper with soapy water. So to stop the helmet filling up with water, I've stuck a bit of blue tack on the bottom to block up the screw hole. Okay, a bit later and another quick pass with the wet and dry, and it feels pretty smooth. Now we won't get a good feel until we give it a coat of primer. Now for painting, I've swapped the blue tack for a long screw, and I've given the helmet a coat of Tamiya fine primer. It'll stick well to the plastic and the silver, but importantly it'll keep all the nice details on the face. When it's fully dry we can roughly mask the face so the thicker primer won't ruin it. The mask doesn't need to be perfect, it's only really there to avoid overspray. Next we'll use some high build primer, taking care to paint from the side and the rear to avoid building it up on the front as far as we can. It's also a much darker colour than the Tamiya, so when we sand it we can clearly see where the low spots are. I've only done the one pass this time, as most of the helmet's going to be obscured by the side nets and the roof, but you can spend as much time as you like getting it perfect. Usually for model aircraft where you get a large canopy, I'd work it until it's just about perfect. Next is another couple of light coats of Tamiya primer, so we've got a nice white base. Then a couple of coats of Halford's aluminium, a silver paint that's somewhere close to the coating that Tamiya use. It's got a flat finish though, so to finish it up we're going to add a couple of light coats of a gloss lacquer. Nothing too crazy, just enough to take the flatness away. Now I should probably mention there's lots of methods for painting things like this. Some use other special products and techniques. This is just how I've ended up doing it over the years. If you try and find out the right way to do things, you'll end up with as many different methods as videos and articles you care to find. The best way to do it is just get stuck in. Watch a couple of videos and get the paints out and do what you think is right. There's really no substitute for just getting stuck in. With the face mask removed, we can give the face a couple of coats of Tamiya flat flesh. Now this won't be the end of the face though, think of it more as a base colour. We need to let it fully dry, or the washes and dry brushing are just going to wipe it straight off. And now, after fiddling around with the paints, we've got a fairly good face. He does look a bit grubby to try and match the suit, but as a happy little accident, he's got a very lazy right eye. I didn't quite keep the white paint where it's supposed to be, then I managed to get the pupil a bit offset to the side, which, given the right light, gives him a bit of a crazy, disturbed vibe. But I think that works well on a buggy called the Wildone. Alright, now we can reassemble. Remembering the lacquer and silver paint is less than a day old, so we need to take care not to damage it. It's still going to be a bit soft. But otherwise, with the head mounted, that's the driver ready to go. As we post him through the front of the cage, we need to watch out for the roof. Other than that, it's all straightforward. A couple of body clips, a few screws, and the final body clip at the front. Job done. Right, hopefully for next week I'll have all the bits to finish up the electronics, that's the lights and the battery. If so, the Wildone will be ready to run. Until then, as always, thanks for watching. Like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!